Before I tell you about Marcus and what he did to 62 children who carried his blood, I need you to do something for me. Write in the comments right now. Where are you watching from, and what time is it in your city? Because what you are about to hear happened in broad daylight, witnessed by 47 people, yet no one stopped it. And I want to know, would you have stopped it? Would you have had the courage? Virginia, 1835. The Vance Plantation, 3,000 acres of tobacco fields stretching toward the Blue Ridge Mountains. And one man who would become a father 62 times before he turned 36 years old. Marcus was 18 years old on the day Colonel Vance called him into the study and explained what his life would become. The study was a room Marcus had never entered before. House slaves cleaned it. Field hands like Marcus had no business inside the main house. But on that August morning, the overseer, a thick-necked man named Pike, came to the tobacco fields and pointed at Marcus. "You! Master wants you. Now." Marcus straightened up from the row he was working, his hands sticky with tobacco sap, his shirt soaked through with sweat. Around him, 40 other slaves kept working, but he felt their eyes on him. Being singled out was never good. It meant punishment or sale or something worse. He followed Pike across the yard, past the cookhouse, past the weaving house, to the main house with its white columns gleaming in the morning sun. Inside, the house was cool and dark. Marcus had never been past the kitchen. Now Pike led him through hallways lined with oil paintings of stern-faced white people, ancestors Marcus would never have names for. His bare feet left dirt prints on polished floors. The study door was open. Colonel Vance sat behind a massive desk covered with papers and ledgers. He was 53 years old, tall and lean, his face weathered from years of supervising fields, his eyes the color of winter sky. Next to him stood a white man Marcus did not recognize, younger, maybe 30, dressed in expensive clothing, holding a leather satchel. The colonel looked up when Marcus entered. He did not smile. "Come here, boy. Stand where I can see you properly." Marcus moved to the center of the room. His heart was hammering against his ribs. He kept his eyes down, fixed on the floor, the survival instinct every enslaved person learned early. Never look directly at a white man. Never show what you are thinking. Become invisible even while standing in full view. "Turn around," the colonel said. Slowly. Marcus turned, feeling their eyes on him, cataloging him like livestock at auction. "Lift your shirt." Marcus hesitated for half a second, then pulled his shirt up to expose his torso. He was powerfully built from years of field work, his shoulders broad, his arms muscled. He had scars on his back from 2 whippings, one when he was 12 for talking back to an overseer, one when he was 16 for working too slowly during harvest. "Drop it," the colonel said. "Now open your mouth." Marcus opened his mouth. The younger white man stepped closer, peering inside like a horse buyer checking teeth. Good teeth. No disease markers. The man spoke clinically, as though Marcus could not hear him. Strong jaw structure. He touched Marcus's face, turning it left and right. Symmetrical features. Skin quality is excellent. Mixed blood heritage is obvious. This one will produce superior offspring. Marcus felt something cold crawl up his spine. Offspring. The colonel leaned back in his chair. "Marcus, I have brought you here because you have been selected for a special purpose. You should consider yourself fortunate. Most field hands work themselves to death by 40. You are being given an opportunity to serve this plantation in a more valuable capacity." Marcus said nothing. There was nothing safe to say. The man with the satchel opened it and pulled out a leather-bound notebook. He flipped through pages covered with diagrams that looked like family trees, lines connecting names, notes in careful handwriting. For the past 12 years, I have been studying selective breeding programs across Virginia and the Carolinas. The principles that work for horses and cattle work equally well for slaves. Better genetics produce better workers, stronger bodies, more intelligence, greater endurance, and most importantly, absolute loyalty when properly conditioned from birth. He looked at Marcus directly for the first time. You have been chosen because your physical qualities are exceptional. Your mother was a healthy woman. Your father, the colonel informs me, was white, which makes you more valuable for our purposes. Mixed blood tends to produce the traits we are cultivating. Marcus felt his stomach turn over. My father? The colonel waved a hand dismissively. That does not matter now. What matters is what you will do for this plantation going forward. You are being removed from field work immediately. You will be housed separately. Your diet will be improved. You will be given better clothing, and you will be paired with selected women for breeding purposes. The word hit Marcus like a fist. Breeding. You will father children, the man with the notebook said. Many children. Each woman has been chosen for specific traits: physical strength, intelligence, lack of defects. Your role is simple. You will impregnate them. The children they produce will become the property of this plantation, raised separately, trained for skilled work. This program will generate substantial profit for Colonel Vance and will secure his family's wealth for generations. Marcus felt his throat closing. He tried to form words, but nothing came out. Do you understand what is being asked of you? The colonel's voice was sharp. This is not a request. This is your function now. You will comply, or you will be sold south to a rice plantation where the work will kill you in 2 years. Those are your choices. Marcus looked up then, breaking the rule about eye contact, meeting the colonel's gaze. For one brief moment, he saw himself reflected there. Not a person, not a man with thoughts and feelings and a future. Just property, just a tool, just a body to be used. I understand, he said quietly. Good. The colonel stood. Pike will take you to your new quarters. The first woman will be brought to you this afternoon. Her name is Esther. Marcus was led out of the study, back through the hallways, past the paintings. Outside, the sun was higher now, the heat building. Pike took him to a small building behind the stables, a structure that had been used for storage. Someone had cleaned it out, put in a bed, a chair, a table. There was even a window with a real glass pane. This is yours now, Pike said. You eat better. You work less. You do what the colonel says. Do not mess this up. Then Pike left, locking the door from the outside. Marcus sat down on the bed. It had a real mattress, not just straw. The sheets were clean. A cage, but with nicer furniture. For breeding. He thought about his mother. Patience. She had died when he was 15, fever taking her in 3 days. Before she died, she had held his hand and told him, "You are strong, stronger than they know. Remember that. No matter what they do to you, they cannot take what is inside you. They cannot own your mind. They cannot own your soul, but they owned his body. And now they were going to use it to create more bodies they would own." 3 hours later, the door opened. Pike stood there with a woman Marcus recognized from the quarters. Her name was Esther. She was 22 years old. Marcus had seen her before, working in the weaving house, her fingers quick and skilled at the loom. She had been married to a man named Samuel 2 years ago. They had a daughter, a little girl named Ruth. 3 years old. Marcus had seen them together on Sundays, the only day slaves were allowed to rest. Samuel would hold Ruth on his shoulders. Esther would sing to her. They were a family, one of the few intact families on the plantation. Esther stood in the doorway now. Her hands were shaking. Her eyes were fixed on the floor. Pike spoke from behind her, his voice flat. "Colonel's orders. You stay here until morning. He pushes you out this door before sunrise, you get 20 lashes. You try to run, you get 50, and your husband gets sold. You understand?" Esther nodded. She did not speak. Pike looked at Marcus. "You do your job, boy. The colonel will check on her condition next month. If she is not pregnant, you both get punished." Then Pike left. The door closed. The lock clicked. Marcus and Esther stood there, 5 feet apart, not looking at each other. The silence stretched. Finally, Esther spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "They took me from the weaving house this morning, told me the colonel had new work for me. Samuel does not know. Ruth was crying when I left. She is only 3. She does not understand why her mama had to go." Marcus felt something break inside him. "I am sorry," he said. "I did not ask for this. I do not want this." Esther looked up at him then. Her eyes were wet, but her face was hard. "It does not matter what you want. It does not matter what I want. They own us. They own our bodies. They can do whatever they want with us." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Samuel and I, we tried for 2 years to have another baby. We wanted Ruth to have a brother or sister, but it never happened. Now I will probably get pregnant with your child, and they will take that baby from me too, just like they will take Ruth when she is old enough to work, just like they took you from your mother." Marcus sat down on the chair. His legs felt weak. What did they tell Samuel? They told him I was being reassigned to the main house, cleaning work. He believed them. She laughed bitterly. He will find out the truth when my belly starts showing. Then he will know his wife was used as a breeding slave. He will know that the child I carry is not his, and there is nothing he can do about it. If he tries to fight, they will sell him or kill him. So he will do nothing. He will just live with it, like we all live with everything they do to us. Marcus wanted to say something, anything, that would make this better. But there was nothing. They were both trapped, both being forced into roles they did not choose, both being used as tools in Colonel Vance's breeding program. Esther walked over to the bed and sat down. She did not look at Marcus. "They are watching," she said. "Pike is probably standing outside the door right now, listening. If we do not do what they expect, we both get punished. So we have to." She took a deep breath. "I am not doing this because I want to. I am doing this because if I do not, they will hurt me. They will hurt Samuel. They will hurt Ruth. That is the only reason. Do you understand?" Marcus nodded. "I understand. I am not doing this because I want to either. I am doing this because they will kill me if I do not. That is the only reason." Esther finally looked at him. "Good. Then we both know the truth. This is not our choice. This is what they are forcing us to do." She stood up and started unbuttoning her dress. Let us get this over with. What happened next was mechanical, emotionless. 2 people doing what they had to do to survive. Marcus felt nothing except shame and anger and helplessness. Esther cried silently the entire time, her face turned away, her body rigid. When it was over, she moved to the far corner of the room and sat there with her knees pulled up to her chest, her arms wrapped around herself. Marcus sat on the floor against the opposite wall, as far from her as possible. Neither of them spoke. They stayed that way until morning, when Pike unlocked the door and told Esther to get out. She left without looking back. Marcus watched her walk across the yard toward the quarters, her head down, her shoulders hunched. She looked smaller than she had the night before. Broken. Pike turned to Marcus. "First one down, 61 more to go. The colonel has a list. They will come one at a time. Some will stay one night. Some will stay longer until they get pregnant. Your job is to make sure they all get pregnant. You fail, you get punished. You succeed, you get rewarded. Simple. 61 more." Marcus felt his stomach turn. This was not a one-time thing. This was his life now. This was what he would do for the next 18 years. Father children he would never be allowed to raise. Destroy families he would never be allowed to join. Become a monster he never wanted to be. 2 months later, Esther confirmed she was pregnant. Pike came to Marcus's building and gave him the news like it was a business transaction. First success. "The colonel is pleased. Your first child will be born next spring. A boy, hopefully. Boys are worth more." Then Pike left. Marcus sat alone in his room and thought about the child growing inside Esther. His child, his son or daughter. A baby who would be born into slavery, who would grow up calling someone else father, who would never know that Marcus was anything more than the breeding slave who fathered them. And 18 years later, Marcus would kill that child, along with 61 others. But on that day in October 1835, Marcus did not know that yet. He only knew that his life had become something unrecognizable, something inhuman, and there was no way out except death. His death or theirs. Esther's son was born in May 1836. Marcus was not allowed to be present at the birth. He heard about it secondhand from Pike. "It is a boy, healthy, strong. The colonel is pleased. Your first success." Pike handed Marcus an extra ration of pork. "Consider it a bonus." Marcus took the pork but could not eat it. He sat in his room and thought about the baby. His son, a child who would grow up enslaved, who would never know Marcus as his father, who would call him the breeding slave if he called him anything at all. The colonel named the boy Thomas, not Marcus, not a name that would connect the child to his biological father. Thomas, property of Colonel Edmund Vance. Value, estimated $800 at maturity. 2 weeks after Thomas was born, the second woman arrived at Marcus's building. Her name was Hannah. She was 19 years old, thin and quiet, with eyes that looked like they had already seen too much. She had no husband, no children. Her mother had been sold south when Hannah was 7. Her father had died in the fields when she was 12. She was alone in the world, which made her perfect for the breeding program. No family to be destroyed, no husband to suffer. Just a woman who could be used without collateral damage. Hannah did not cry when the door closed behind her. She just looked at Marcus and asked, "How many times do I have to do this?" Marcus did not understand the question at first. Pike had not explained. Hannah sat down on the bed and said, "The colonel told me I have to stay here until I get pregnant. That could take weeks, months." "How long did the last one stay?" Marcus told her. "1 night. Esther got pregnant on the first try." Hannah nodded slowly. "So I might be here a long time." Marcus said nothing. There was nothing to say. Hannah stared at the wall. She said, "My mother used to tell me stories about a place up north where black people could be free, where you could walk down the street and no one owned you, where you could marry who you wanted and keep your children and work for money that you got to keep. She said if I was smart and patient, maybe I could escape there someday." She paused. "That was 12 years ago. I am still here, still waiting to be smart enough, still waiting to be patient enough. Now I am in this room with you, and I will probably get pregnant and have a baby that they will take from me and sell. And I will never get to that place up north. I will die here, just like my mother, just like my father, just like everyone. Marcus wanted to tell her she was wrong, that she could still escape, that there was still hope, but he could not lie to her. She was right. She would die here. They all would. So he said, "I am sorry." Hannah laughed bitterly. "For what? You did not create this system. You are just another tool in it, just like me." She stood up and started unbuttoning her dress. "Let us get this over with. Maybe I will be lucky like Esther. Maybe it will only take one night." It did not. Hannah stayed for 6 weeks. The first week, she cried every night. Marcus could hear her even after they were done, lying on the opposite side of the room, her face turned to the wall, her shoulders shaking. The second week, she stopped crying and started talking. She told Marcus about her childhood before her mother was sold, about learning to weave cloth from an old woman in the quarters, about a boy she had liked when she was 15 who had been sold before she could tell him, about her dream of having a daughter someday who would somehow be born free. By the 4th week, Hannah stopped talking. She just stared at the walls during the day, picking at the hem of her dress, humming songs with no words. By the 6th week, she was pregnant. Pike confirmed it in August. Hannah left without saying goodbye. She just walked out the door when Pike opened it, her eyes empty, her steps mechanical. Marcus watched her go and wondered if she would ever speak again. Hannah's daughter was born in April 1837. The colonel named her Mary. Value, estimated $600 at maturity. Girls were worth less than boys, but still profitable. Marcus never spoke to Hannah again. He saw her sometimes in the distance, working in the weaving house, her hands moving automatically, her face blank. She looked like a ghost, like something that had died but forgotten to stop moving. The third woman came in June 1837, the fourth in September, the fifth in December. By 1840, Marcus had fathered 11 children: Thomas, Mary, Jacob, Sarah, Daniel, Rebecca, Matthew, Elizabeth, Joshua, Abigail, Caleb. 11 names, 11 lives, 11 children scattered across the plantation like seeds planted in rows. Marcus was 23 years old. He had been breeding for 5 years. The work had become mechanical. The women came. They stayed. They got pregnant. They left. Marcus felt nothing. The emptiness inside him had grown so vast that there was no room left for anything else. He was a shell, a body doing what it was told. Then one Sunday afternoon in June 1840, Marcus was walking near the slave quarters when he saw Thomas, Esther's son, his son. Thomas was 4 years old, playing in the dirt with other children. He was tall for his age, with broad shoulders and quick hands. He looked like Marcus. The resemblance was unmistakable. Same bone structure, same build, same skin tone. Marcus stopped and watched him. Thomas was laughing, chasing another boy around a tree. He looked happy, innocent. He had no idea what he was, what he had been created for. Samuel appeared from one of the cabins, Esther's husband, the man raising Marcus's son. Samuel scooped Thomas up and put him on his shoulders. Thomas shrieked with joy, grabbing Samuel's hair for balance. Samuel laughed and spun around, making Thomas dizzy. They looked like a father and son. They were a father and son in every way that mattered. Samuel had fed Thomas, changed him, comforted him when he cried, taught him to walk and talk. Marcus was just the man who had violated Thomas's mother, the man who had destroyed this family before it even began. Samuel saw Marcus watching. He stopped spinning. Thomas was still on his shoulders, still laughing. Samuel and Marcus locked eyes across the yard. For a long moment, neither moved. Then Samuel turned away deliberately, carrying Thomas back into the cabin, shutting the door. The message was clear. You have no claim here. You are not wanted. You are not his father. You are nothing. Marcus stood there for a while after they disappeared. He felt something stir inside him, something he had thought was dead. It might have been grief, or rage, or both. He walked away quickly, back toward his building, before anyone else could see his face. That night, Marcus could not sleep. He lay in the darkness and thought about Samuel's expression, the cold contempt, the protective way he had held Thomas, the door closing in Marcus's face. Samuel was right to hate him. Everyone in the quarters hated him. He was the breeding slave, the tool the master used to destroy families, the weapon, the knife. He was complicit in his own way, not just a victim, a participant. 3 days later, Samuel found Marcus behind the tobacco barn. No one else was around. Samuel grabbed Marcus by the shirt and slammed him against the wall. You think I do not know? Samuel's voice was low and dangerous. You think everyone does not know what you are? Thomas has your face, your build, your height. Every time I look at him, I see you. Every time I hold him, I remember what they did to Esther, and I hate you for it. Marcus said nothing. He just stood there and took it. I know they forced you, Samuel continued. I know you did not have a choice, but neither did Esther. And now I have to raise your son. I have to pretend he is mine. I have to love a child who exists because my wife was raped. And you know what the worst part is? I do love him. Thomas is my son in every way that matters, but he will never really be mine. Because everyone knows, everyone whispers, everyone looks at us and sees your crime, your mark, your shame. Marcus met Samuel's eyes. I am sorry, he said quietly. I know that does not mean anything. I know it does not fix anything. But I am sorry. Samuel let go of Marcus's shirt. He stepped back. Your sorrow means nothing to me. Your guilt means nothing to me. You are still alive. You are still breeding. You are still destroying families. Sorry does not stop that. Sorry does not bring back what we lost. He turned to walk away, then stopped. One day, this will end. One day, you will answer for what you have done. Maybe not to the colonel, maybe not to God, but to those children. When they grow up and understand what they are, when they realize they were created as tools, as property, they will come for you, and you will deserve whatever they do to you. Samuel walked away. Marcus slid down the wall and sat in the dirt. He did not cry. He had no tears left. He just sat there and thought, Samuel is right. The children will hate me. They should. And when they are old enough to understand, they will wish I had never been born. By 1842, Marcus had fathered 18 children. The colonel was pleased. The breeding program was working exactly as planned. Each child, once old enough to work, added value to the plantation. Some worked the fields. Some worked the stables. Some were being trained in specialized skills. They were profitable, efficient, everything the colonel had hoped for. And then came Grace. Grace was 26 years old, married to a blacksmith named Isaiah. They had 3 sons together. Grace had been chosen for the breeding program because of her intelligence and physical strength. She was literate, rare for a slave. She could read the Bible. She could do arithmetic. The colonel wanted those traits passed down. Grace was taken from her family in March 1841 and brought to Marcus's building. She did not cry. She did not beg. She just looked at Marcus with exhausted resignation and said, "Let us get this over with quickly. I want to go back to my sons." But it was not quick. Days passed. Weeks passed. Grace did not get pregnant. The colonel grew impatient. He ordered Pike to keep Grace at the breeding house longer. Feed her better. Make sure Marcus does his job properly. Months went by. Still nothing. Grace stayed in that small building with Marcus, separated from her husband and sons, waiting for her body to cooperate with the colonel's plan. During those months, Grace talked to Marcus. Really talked. She told him about her sons. Peter was 10, learning to read from a white child on a neighboring plantation. James was 8, helping his father at the forge. Samuel was 6, quiet and thoughtful. She told him about Isaiah, how they had jumped the broom 7 years ago, how he carved her a wooden comb for their first anniversary. She told him about the life she had built, the small precious things that made slavery bearable. And she told him how this breeding program was destroying all of it. "Isaiah knows where I am," she said one night. "He knows what is happening here, and there is nothing he can do about it. It is killing him. I can see it in his eyes when Pike brings me back to the quarters for a few hours each month to prove I am still alive. Isaiah looks at me like I am already dead, like I am a ghost of his wife." Marcus listened. He did not have words to offer. What could he say? But he listened, and for the first time in 6 years, he felt something. Not love, not friendship, just recognition. Grace was a person, a real person with thoughts and feelings and a family. She was not just a body. She was someone who had been destroyed by the same system that had destroyed him. After 3 months, Grace finally got pregnant. Pike confirmed it in June 1841. Grace left the next day. She stood in the doorway before she walked out and looked back at Marcus. "When my baby is born, I am going to tell Isaiah the truth, that I was forced, that it was not my choice, that you were forced too. He needs to know that. He needs to know this was not our fault." Marcus nodded. He wanted to thank her for that kindness, for seeing him as more than a monster. But the words stuck in his throat. Grace left. The door closed. 3 months later, Pike came to Marcus's building with news. Grace had a miscarriage. The baby died at 7 months. A boy. The colonel is disappointed. This is your first failure. Pike looked at Marcus expectantly, waiting for a reaction. Marcus felt something unexpected. Relief, not sadness, not grief. Relief. One child who would not be born into slavery. One child who would not grow up calling him the breeding slave. One child who would not have to carry the shame of being created in a breeding program. Grace's body had rejected the pregnancy. Maybe it was stress. Maybe it was trauma. Maybe her body had simply said no. Marcus sat alone that night and thought about the child who had never been born. And he felt grateful. That was the moment he knew something inside him had broken permanently. A normal person would mourn a lost child. He was relieved. What did that make him? What had he become? The colonel summoned Marcus to the study. "This is unacceptable. 6 years, 19 pregnancies, and now a failure. I need to know why. Is there something wrong with you?" The breeding specialist examined Marcus again. No, he is still healthy, still strong. The miscarriage was not his fault. Women under extreme stress can lose pregnancies. It is a biological response. The colonel frowned. "Then we need to reduce the stress. Keep the women here longer. Make them comfortable. Feed them better. Each failed pregnancy is money lost." From that point on, the women who came to Marcus's building stayed longer. Some stayed 3 months, some stayed 6 months. The building became a prison. Women were held captive until their bodies produced what the colonel wanted. Marcus watched them break. Some cried constantly. Some stopped talking altogether. Some tried to hurt themselves. Pike would drag them out and beat them until they complied. Then they would be brought back, bruised and broken, to continue. One woman, a field hand named Deborah, stayed for 8 months. She was 17 years old, terrified, and alone. For the first month, she fought Marcus every time he touched her. She scratched his face, bit his arms, screamed curses at him. Pike beat her 3 times. Each time, she came back more broken. By the 2nd month, she stopped fighting. By the 4th month, she stopped speaking. She just lay there during their encounters, staring at the ceiling, tears running down her face. By the 6th month, she got pregnant. But she did not act pregnant. She did not protect her stomach. She did not eat the extra food Pike brought. She just sat in the corner and stared at nothing. When Deborah finally left, Marcus asked Pike what happened to her. Pike shrugged. She went back to the fields, had her baby, a girl, healthy. The colonel was satisfied. And Deborah? What about her? Pike gave Marcus a strange look. What about her? She is fine, working, breathing. What else matters? But Marcus had seen Deborah's eyes when she left. There was nothing behind them. No person, no soul, just empty space. She was not fine. She was a shell. And Marcus had helped create that shell. He was part of the machine that had destroyed her. By 1845, Marcus had fathered 27 children, 27 sons and daughters spread across the plantation. The oldest were 9 years old. The youngest were newborns. They ranged across the property like crops, planted and harvested according to the colonel's design. Marcus saw them sometimes when he was allowed outside. They worked in the fields. They worked in the stables. They worked in the kitchen. They were everywhere, and none of them looked at him with anything except contempt or fear. To them, he was the breeding slave, the monster their mothers whispered about, the man who existed in shame. Then, in March 1848, something happened that changed everything. The colonel invited plantation owners from across Virginia to tour his operation. He wanted to show off his success. 40 children, he announced to the gathering in the main house garden. 40 children fathered by one slave in 13 years. This is the future of agriculture in the South. Selective breeding, controlled reproduction, maximum efficiency. The plantation owners applauded. They asked questions. How did you do it? What is the secret? The colonel smiled and gestured toward a window. Marcus was standing there, visible to everyone. That is the secret. One strong male. Remove him from field work. Feed him well. Keep him healthy. Pair him with carefully selected women. Keep detailed records. Monitor results. Repeat. It is simple. I now have 40 workers who cost me nothing to produce. When they reach maturity, I can sell each one for $800 to $1,000, or keep them and use them to build more wealth. Marcus stood at the window and listened to himself being described like livestock. The plantation owners stared at him. Some nodded approvingly. Some took notes. One asked, "Would you consider selling him? I would pay $2,000. Another said, "I would pay $2,500. The colonel laughed. "No, he is too valuable. But I will rent him out. Bring your women here. For $200 per pregnancy, I will allow them to breed with Marcus. You get a child with superior genetics. I get profit. Everyone wins." The plantation owners murmured approval. Several agreed on the spot. They would send women within the month. Marcus stood there and felt something inside him break, something that had survived everything else. He was not just a breeding slave. He was a business, a service, a product to be rented and used until he wore out. 2 weeks later, the first rental happened. A plantation owner named Whitfield arrived with a woman named Margaret. She was 23 years old, brought from a plantation 30 miles away, specifically to breed with Marcus. Whitfield paid the colonel $200, cash. Marcus saw the exchange through the window, money changing hands, his body sold by the hour. Margaret was brought to his building. She looked at him with disgust and resignation. "How do you live with yourself?" she asked. "How do you wake up every day knowing what you are, knowing what you have done?" Marcus had no answer. Margaret shook her head. "I feel sorry for you. You are as much a victim as the rest of us. But you are also the weapon they are using against us. You are the knife, the gun, the tool. And someday, those children you fathered are going to hate you for existing. They are going to wish you had never been born. And you know what? They will be right." She left 3 weeks later, pregnant. Marcus sat alone in his building and thought about her words. She was right. The children would hate him. They already did. And they should. He had fathered them, yes, but he had also destroyed their mothers, destroyed their families, created them for the sole purpose of being enslaved. He was complicit, not just a victim, a participant, a collaborator. He could have refused. He could have fought back. He could have chosen death over this. But he had not. He had chosen survival. And survival had made him a monster. That night, Marcus made a decision. If he was going to be a monster, he would be one on his own terms. He would continue to breed. He would continue to father children. But when the time came, when the moment was right, he would destroy everything. He would kill the colonel, kill Pike, kill the breeding specialist, and he would kill the children. All of them, every single one, because they were his blood. They had come from him. And if they were going to suffer in this world, if they were going to grow up enslaved and destroyed and broken like Deborah and Hannah and Grace, then he would end their suffering. He would take them out of this world before it could destroy them completely. It was not mercy exactly. It was something else, something darker. A father's right to destroy what he had created. A creator's right to unmake his creation. Marcus did not know when he would do it. Not yet. The number was not complete. But he knew how. Poison. Oleander grew wild behind the quarters. He had watched other slaves harvest it carefully for years, using it to poison rats in the grain stores. A small amount killed a rat in minutes. A large amount would kill a human. And if he ground it fine enough, mixed it with the right food, no one would taste it until it was too late. He would wait for a harvest festival, a celebration when everyone gathered, when the colonel forced the slaves to sing and dance and pretend to be happy. He would poison the communal food. He would watch them all eat. The colonel, Pike, the overseers, and the children. All 40 of them. He would watch them die. And then he would eat the same food, and he would die too. And when it was over, the colonel's grand experiment would be finished. 40 children, gone. One monster, dead. The breeding program destroyed from within. Marcus did not feel guilt about this plan. He felt calm, purposeful. For the first time in 13 years, he had control, not over his body, not over his life, but over how it would end. And that was something. He lay down on the bed and closed his eyes. He had 22 more children to father, 22 more pregnancies, and then the harvest, and then the end. By 1850, Marcus had fathered 50 children. The oldest was 14. The youngest were newborns. 50 children scattered across the Vance plantation and several neighboring properties where the colonel had rented Marcus out. 50 biological offspring who carried his blood and hated his existence. Marcus was 33 years old. He had been breeding for 15 years. 15 years of mechanical encounters. 15 years of watching women break. 15 years of becoming something less than human. The children were everywhere now, too many to avoid. Marcus saw them daily, working in the fields, working in the stables, working in the kitchen. They ranged in age from newborns to teenagers, and every single one of them looked at him with the same expression: contempt, fear, disgust, hatred. They knew what he was: the breeding slave, the man who had violated their mothers, the tool the colonel used to create more tools. Thomas was 14 years old in 1850. He looked even more like Marcus now. Tall, broad-shouldered, strong. He worked in the fields alongside Samuel, who had raised him as his own son. One day in June 1850, Marcus was walking near the tobacco fields when he heard shouting. He looked over and saw Thomas fighting with another slave, a young man named Jacob. Jacob was 18 years old. He was also Marcus's biological son. The two young men were on the ground, fists flying, blood streaming from both their faces. Pike appeared and dragged them apart. What is this about? Jacob spat blood into the dirt. He called my mother a whore, said she spread her legs for the breeding slave like all the others. Thomas wiped blood from his nose. I said it because it is true. Your mother did spread her legs for him, just like mine did, just like all of them did. We are all products of rape. We are all mistakes. We should never have been born. Pike looked between them. You are both the colonel's property. You do not get to fight each other. You do not get to have opinions about how you were created. You exist to work. That is all. Now get back to the fields before I whip you both. The crowd dispersed. Marcus stood at the edge of the field and watched them go. His sons, 2 of 50. And they hated each other almost as much as they hated him. That night, Marcus thought about what Thomas had said. We should never have been born. The boy was right. None of them should have been born. They were mistakes, abominations, and Marcus would correct that mistake. In August 1851, a woman named Naomi arrived at Marcus's building. She was 24 years old, purchased from a plantation in South Carolina. She had tried to escape twice before. Both times she had been caught and whipped. Her back was covered with scars, deep raised welts that would never fully heal. Naomi looked at Marcus with pure hatred. You are worse than the masters, she said. At least they admit they are evil. You pretend you have no choice, but you do. You could refuse. You could die instead. But you choose this. You choose to keep living. You choose to keep destroying us. Marcus said nothing. What could he say? Naomi stayed for 4 weeks. She did not speak to him again after that first night. On the 3rd week, she tried to hang herself using a torn sheet. Pike found her and cut her down. She was unconscious, but alive. Pike beat her until she woke up, then brought her back to Marcus's building. You try that again, he said to Naomi, and we will kill your sister in the quarters. You understand? Naomi nodded. She stopped fighting after that. She just lay there, staring at the ceiling, waiting for it to be over. She got pregnant in the 4th week. When she left, she whispered something Marcus barely heard. I hope you burn in hell, and I hope your children are the ones who send you there. Marcus began collecting oleander that same month. He did it slowly, carefully over months. A few leaves here, a few flowers there. Never enough at once to be noticed. By December, he had enough to kill 100 people. He hid it beneath the floorboards of his building, wrapped in cloth. He also stole a knife from the cookhouse, a long carving knife used for butchering pigs. He wrapped it in oilcloth and hid it with the poison. The Colonel and Pike would not eat slave food at the harvest festival. They never did. But Marcus had planned for that too. After the poison activated, after the children started dying, after the chaos began, Marcus would walk to the porch where they stood. He would climb the steps, and he would kill them. Pike first, then the Colonel. It would not be quick. It would not be painless. They deserved to suffer. They deserved to understand what they had created. By 1852, Marcus had fathered 56 children. Then came the complication. Thomas turned 16. He was old enough now to be sold, and the Colonel received an offer. A plantation owner in Georgia wanted to buy Thomas for $1,000. The Colonel considered it. $1,000 was significant. But Marcus heard about this from Pike and felt panic. If Thomas was sold before October 1853, he would escape the poison. The plan required all 62 children to die, not 61. All of them. Marcus did something he had never done before. He interfered. The next time the Georgia plantation owner visited to inspect Thomas, Marcus told Pike that Thomas had been sick recently. A fever. It lasted 3 days. It was a lie. Thomas was perfectly healthy. But Pike mentioned it to the Colonel. The Colonel mentioned it to the plantation owner. The man frowned. "I do not want to buy damaged goods. If the boy has a weak constitution, he is not worth $1,000. The sale was postponed. Thomas stayed on the plantation, and Marcus felt relief. Not because he loved Thomas, but because Thomas would now die with the others, as planned, as required. In March 1852, a woman named Lydia arrived. She was 20 years old. She had never been with a man before. She cried the entire first night, begging Marcus not to touch her. But there was nowhere to go. Pike was outside. The Colonel was waiting for results. Lydia got pregnant after 5 weeks. Her daughter was born in December, child number 57. 5 more to go. In May 1853, the 61st woman arrived. Her name was Miriam. She was 32 years old, the oldest woman Marcus had been paired with. She had been married for 10 years. She had 4 children of her own. Her husband had died 6 months earlier. Miriam did not cry. She just looked at Marcus with exhausted resignation and said, "Let us get this over with. I want to go back to my children. They need me." Miriam got pregnant in 3 weeks. Her son was born in February 1854, child number 61. 1 more to go. The last woman arrived in July 1853. Her name was Rachel. She was 18 years old, born on the Vance plantation. She had grown up in the quarters. She knew who Marcus was. Rachel walked into Marcus's building and stood in the center, her arms crossed, her face hard. "I know you," she said. "I have known you my whole life. You are the man everyone whispers about, the breeding slave, the monster. My mother told me stories about you. She said you have fathered dozens of children. She said you are the reason so many families are broken. She said you are a tool of the devil." Marcus said nothing. "I do not want to be here," Rachel continued. "I do not want this, but I have no choice, just like you have no choice, just like my mother had no choice when they sold her to Alabama 3 years ago. So let us do what they want us to do. Let us create another child who will grow up enslaved and broken and full of hate. Let us add another name to the list of people who should never have been born. Rachel got pregnant in October 1853. Pike confirmed it on October 15th. Marcus had fathered 62 children. The number was complete. Now came the harvest. Marcus ground the oleander into powder the night before the festival. He used a stone mortar and pestle he had stolen months earlier. He worked slowly, carefully, grinding the dried leaves and flowers into fine dust. The powder was pale green, almost white. It smelled bitter and acrid. Marcus mixed it with water to form a paste, then added molasses to mask the taste. By midnight, he had prepared enough poison to kill every person on the plantation. The festival was October 17th, 1853, a Saturday. The weather was clear and cool. The tobacco harvest had been good. The colonel was pleased. A pig was slaughtered and roasted. Cornbread was baked. Greens were cooked in large pots. Molasses cakes were made. Everything was ready. Marcus woke up that morning and felt nothing. No fear, no guilt, no hesitation. Just calm. Today, everything would end. He walked to the gathering area. Dozens of people were already there. The children were running around, playing, laughing. They had no idea. Thomas was there, helping Samuel carry a table. Jacob was there, hauling firewood. All 62 children were present, or would be soon. They were required to attend. By 1 o'clock, the food was ready. Everything was laid out on long tables. Pike gave the signal. Everyone lined up to eat. Marcus waited until the line formed. Then he walked to the table where the molasses cake sat. He pulled the container of poison from under his shirt. His hands were steady. His mind was clear. He opened the container and drizzled the poisoned molasses over every single cake. The dark liquid soaked into the bread, invisible, undetectable. He worked quickly, methodically. Then he stepped back and watched. People filled their plates. Children grabbed molasses cakes, their favorite. Marcus saw Thomas take 2. He saw Jacob take 1. He saw Mary take 1 and give half to a younger child, a little girl named Ruth, only 3 years old, one of Marcus's youngest daughters. Ruth smiled at Mary and said thank you in a tiny voice. She bit into the cake. Crumbs stuck to her cheeks. She laughed. Marcus watched her eat. She had no idea what was happening. None of them did. Ruth would be dead in 20 minutes. So would Mary. So would Thomas. So would Jacob. So would all 62 of them. The festival continued. People chewed and swallowed. Children laughed. Music started. Someone had brought out a fiddle. The colonel and Pike stood on the porch, drinking whiskey, watching the celebration. They looked satisfied. But in 20 minutes, everything would change. In 20 minutes, the poison would activate, and Marcus would finally be free. He took a molasses cake for himself. He raised it to his mouth. The molasses was sweet. The poison was bitter underneath. He chewed. He swallowed. He waited. Under his shirt, the knife pressed against his ribs. When the dying started, he would walk to that porch. He would climb those steps, and he would finish what he had begun 18 years ago. 20 minutes passed. The music continued. The fiddle played. Children laughed and chased each other around the tables. Adults sat in small groups, talking quietly, enjoying the rare moment of rest. The colonel and Pike stood on the porch of the main house, watching the celebration, drinking whiskey. Everything appeared normal, perfect, exactly as the colonel had planned. Marcus stood at the edge of the gathering and watched. He felt the poison working inside him, a slight burning in his stomach, a tightness in his chest. It was starting. For him. and for 62 others who had eaten the same cakes. The first person to collapse was a child, a boy named Daniel, 7 years old, one of Marcus's younger sons. He had been running with other children when he suddenly stopped. He put his hand on his stomach. He looked confused. Then he vomited. Dark liquid splattered onto the dirt. The other children stopped playing and stared. Daniel tried to say something but vomited again. Then his legs gave out and he fell. An older woman, one of the cooks, rushed to him. "What is wrong? What happened?" But before she could reach Daniel, another child fell. Then another. Then 3 adults collapsed simultaneously, their bodies convulsing, foam coming from their mouths. Within seconds, chaos erupted. People were screaming, running. Some tried to help those who had fallen. Some tried to flee. Pike jumped off the porch and ran toward the crowd, shouting orders. The colonel stood frozen, his whiskey glass still in his hand, watching his investment die before his eyes. Marcus saw Thomas collapse near the tables. His body went rigid. His back arched. His eyes rolled back in his head. Samuel was next to him instantly, grabbing Thomas, screaming his name. But Thomas could not hear him. The poison had shut down his nervous system. He was dying, just like the plan required. Marcus saw Jacob fall next. Then Mary. Then Ruth, the 3-year-old who had laughed with cake crumbs on her cheeks just minutes ago. She was on the ground now, her small body twitching, her mother screaming over her. All around the yard, children and adults were collapsing. The poison worked fast, brutal, efficient, exactly as Marcus had designed it. Marcus felt his own body beginning to fail. His vision was blurring, his legs were weakening. He had minutes left, maybe less. But he had one thing left to do. He reached under his shirt and pulled out the knife, the long carving blade he had stolen months ago. He gripped it tight and started walking toward the porch. Pike saw him first. Pike was in the middle of the chaos, trying to understand what was happening, trying to restore order. Then he saw Marcus walking toward him with a knife. Pike's eyes widened. "You? What did you do? What the hell did you do?" Marcus did not answer. He just kept walking. Pike reached for his whip, but Marcus was faster. He lunged forward and drove the knife into Pike's stomach. Once, twice, 3 times. Pike gasped and fell backward, blood pouring from the wounds. He tried to speak, but only managed a gurgling sound. Then his eyes went blank, and he was dead. The colonel saw Pike fall. He dropped his whiskey glass and stumbled backward toward the door of the main house. He was trying to escape, but Marcus was already climbing the porch steps. His vision was darkening. His chest felt like it was being crushed. But he had enough strength for this, enough strength to finish it. The colonel backed into the house. Marcus followed. The colonel grabbed a candlestick from a table and swung it at Marcus. It connected with Marcus's shoulder, but did nothing. Marcus grabbed the colonel by his shirt and slammed him against the wall. The colonel tried to fight back, tried to push Marcus away, but he was older, weaker, terrified. Marcus raised the knife. "Wait," the colonel gasped. "Wait. What do you want? Money? Freedom? I can give you anything. Just tell me what you want." Marcus looked at him. For 18 years, this man had owned him. For 18 years, this man had used him as a breeding tool. For 18 years, this man had profited from Marcus's suffering. And now the colonel thought he could negotiate, thought he could buy his way out of this. Marcus almost laughed, but he did not have breath left for laughing. He only had breath left for this. "I want you to understand what you created," Marcus said. His voice was hoarse. His vision was fading fast. "I want you to know that I just killed 62 children. Your children. My children, all of them, dead because of you, because of this, because you decided I was a tool instead of a human being. So now I am taking back the only thing I ever had, the right to end it, all of it, including you." The colonel's face went white. "No, no, you could not have." 62? That is impossible. Those children are worth $40,000. You destroyed $40,000. Marcus drove the knife into the colonel's chest. "That is all you care about. The money, not the lives, not the suffering, just the money." The colonel's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Blood bubbled up from his lips. Marcus twisted the knife. The colonel's eyes went wide with pain and shock. Then the light faded from them. His body went limp. Marcus let him drop to the floor. Marcus stood there for a moment, looking down at the colonel's body. He felt nothing, no satisfaction, no relief, just emptiness. He turned and walked back outside. The poison was winning now. His body was shutting down. His heart was slowing. His lungs were struggling to pull in air. But he wanted to see it. He wanted to see what he had done before he died. The yard was filled with bodies. Some were still convulsing. Some were already dead. The ones who had not eaten the cakes were trying to help, but there was nothing they could do. 63 people had been poisoned. 62 children and Marcus himself, and the poison was doing its work. Marcus saw Samuel kneeling over Thomas's body. Samuel was crying, shaking Thomas, begging him to wake up. But Thomas was gone. His eyes were open and empty. His body was still. Samuel looked up and saw Marcus standing there. Understanding crossed Samuel's face. You did this? You killed him? You killed your own son." Marcus wanted to say something, wanted to explain, but his throat was closing. His vision was going dark. He tried to take a step, but his legs gave out. He fell to his knees. Around him, the last few children were dying. The youngest ones went first. Their small bodies could not fight the poison. Ruth was dead. So was Daniel. So was Isaac, the baby born just months ago. All of them. Every single one. 62 children who should never have been born. Dead. Because Marcus had decided that death was better than the life they would have lived. Marcus fell forward onto the ground, his face pressed into the dirt. He could hear screaming, could hear Samuel cursing him, could hear the chaos and grief and horror. But it was fading. Everything was fading. The poison was finishing its work. Marcus's heart beat once more, twice, then stopped. Esther found Marcus's body an hour later. She had not attended the festival. She had been in the weaving house, working, trying to avoid seeing Thomas, trying to avoid remembering what had been done to her 18 years ago. When she heard the screaming, she ran outside, and she saw the bodies. Dozens of them, children mostly, all dead or dying. And there, among them, was Marcus, the man who had fathered her son, the man who had destroyed her life, the man who had just destroyed 62 other lives. Esther stood over Marcus's body and felt nothing. No grief, no relief, no anger, just exhaustion. She looked around at the carnage and understood immediately what had happened. Marcus had poisoned them, all of them, his own children, and himself. It was mass murder and mass suicide combined, the ultimate act of a man who had been broken so completely that he saw death as mercy. The survivors buried the dead in a mass grave behind the slave quarters. 63 bodies in one pit. The children were placed first, then Marcus on top. No ceremony, no prayers, just dirt covering flesh until nothing remained visible. The colonel's body was buried separately in the family plot with a proper funeral. But Marcus and the 62 children were buried together in an unmarked grave. No one wanted to remember them. No one wanted to think about what had happened. It was too horrifying, too incomprehensible. In the years after, people tried to make sense of it. They told stories. They created myths. Some said Marcus had been possessed by the devil. Some said the children had been cursed. Some said it was divine punishment for the sin of slavery. But the truth was simpler and more terrible. Marcus had been human. He had been broken by a system that treated people as property. And when a person is broken completely, when they have nothing left, they do the only thing they can. They destroy everything, including themselves, including the ones they love, including the innocent. The breeding program died with Marcus. No other plantation owner attempted it after that. The risk was too great. If one slave could destroy 62 children, what could others do? Fear spread. Controls tightened. But the damage was done. Everyone knew now what slavery could create. Not just workers, not just profit, but monsters. Human beings so destroyed by the system that they became capable of unthinkable acts. Thomas was 17 when he died. He had been planning to escape north in the spring. He had saved a little money. He had contacts on the Underground Railroad. He had hope. But Marcus took that hope away. Marcus decided that death was better than slavery. And Thomas never got to make that choice for himself. None of the 62 children did. Samuel lived another 15 years. He never remarried, never adopted another child. He worked the fields until his body gave out. And every night he thought about Thomas, wondered what Thomas would have become if he had lived, wondered if Marcus had been right, if death really was better than the life they were forced to live. Samuel never found an answer. He just carried the grief until it killed him too. Esther lived to see the end of slavery. She was 52 years old when the Emancipation Proclamation was signed. She walked off the Vance plantation and never looked back. She moved north, found work, built a small life. But she never forgot Thomas, never forgot the sound of his laugh when he was a baby, never forgot the way he looked at her with love before he understood what she was, what Marcus was, what they had all been, tools in a machine that ground them down until there was nothing left but pain. And Esther lived with that pain every day for the rest of her life. The Vance plantation was sold in 1855. The new owner tore down the breeding building where Marcus had spent 18 years. He filled in the mass grave and planted tobacco over it. He tried to erase what had happened. But the story survived, passed down through generations, whispered in slave quarters across the South. The story of Marcus, the breeding slave who fathered 62 children and then killed them all. Some called him a monster. Some called him a hero. Most just called him broken. And they wondered quietly if they would have done the same thing in his place, if they would have had the courage or the cruelty or the mercy to end it all, to choose death over slavery, to destroy their children rather than watch them suffer. No one had an answer, because slavery made those questions unanswerable. It created situations where there were no good choices, only terrible ones. And Marcus had made the most terrible choice of all.